Hello, welcome to the North Dakota Safety Council Ergonomics Tips for your work from home space. We've seen a giant uptick, obviously, in the need for working at home through the COVID-19 epidemic that we were plagued with, and we will probably see a lot of that continuing. And there always has been a push for a lot of jobs to be done in home office. And when it comes to ergonomics, we see that we spend a lot of time on the workplace and making sure that the workspace is fitting the employee. But that's drifted a little bit when we talk about home offices and work from home type activities. So we just want to key on a few things on the whys and hows and what can be done to actually help a person be better in positioning and better in the workspace that you're utilizing at home to keep yourself safe. So we're going to talk about discomfort or injury, which can be resultant from computer use and in our home office and setting up the home office, recommending work practices and how we set up our work areas, and then use of stretch and breaks, which is something common to all ergonomics that really does help those injuries a lot. So there's some primary contributors for computer-related discomfort and injury. They're no different than what we visualize or see or are experienced with in the workplace itself, in the workplace that we go with everybody else in our businesses. But when we're working at home again, a lot of that kind of doesn't get focused on maybe the way it should. So we want to talk about the things like improper body positioning. And why is that important? That's important because it puts added stresses on all the joints and tissues, the ligaments, tendons, and all of this starts being what we call cumulative. And that cumulative stress, maybe we don't notice it right away, maybe we notice just a little bit of a ache or a pain, and we keep on working and it keeps getting worse and worse. So it's that cumulative chronic type exposure that we're looking at getting rid of so that we don't have these problems. Stationary postures can be part of it. They can decrease the blood flow, which can lead to fatigue, stiffness, and slow the repair of the body tissues. When we decrease blood flow, we decrease oxygen. And oxygen is the key to the muscles actually being able to do their job. When we work out, when we run, when we walk, when we exert and lifting or shoveling, whatever we're doing, even in gardening situations, you'll have that muscle burn. We call it a burn. It feels like a burn. And what that is, that's the muscles that are lacking oxygen now. We've used up a lot of the oxygen in the system. The blood flow can't get there and replace it the way it wants to, or the way it needs to. So we see things happening and the body is crying out for some extra oxygen. So anything we can do to increase blood flow and keep that blood flow going, keep the oxygen levels up, is going to help us in maintaining good muscle tone and good muscle flexibility. And it's also going to help us from those stress injuries. The contact stress is that ongoing contact with a sharp corner, hard surface, puts pressures on the body parts, and those are things that we might not even notice. It can be the edge of a desk. It can be a bad chair, that we don't have a good office chair, a good environment that we're using, and that would be something that you're going to have to look at for the potential for some contact stresses. So then we talk about repetitive motion. And obviously the keyboard, mouse are things that we're always going to be looking at. One of the things that we will really benefit from there is taking those breaks. We start, even if we don't feel something as we're working, we want to take some regular breaks. And if we do start feeling a stress or a strain or an ache or a pain, time to get up, stretch, move around, and make sure that we're keeping the body moving around and flexible. So we're going to talk about body postures, we want to look at those neutral body postures. And if you've ever been exposed at the workplace to a ergonomics workplace assessment, you should actually bring those forms home and at least review them on your own. If you have a coworker that can come in and help you, sometimes they'll see things that we don't even realize we're doing. It would probably be a good idea. Hazard assessments in all situations are good, and this is one place where they can be very, very beneficial. So we're looking at hazard assessment to make sure we're correcting body positions using neutral postures, which generally occur when your spine and joints are positioned in the middle of their range. So examples of having straight wrists, 90-degree bends at the elbows, head and neck, spine not rounded forward. So if the monitor is too high or too low, that would cause our necks not to be in that neutral position and cause some real additional strain. And again, some of that's not going to be noticed, maybe even until the evening when we're done work, or the next day, or the day after that. So we want to, again, make sure we're doing the right things at all times and getting the leg up on all of the good postures and stuff that we need and the good positions that we have to have when we're working, especially on the computers continuously, like we do a lot of times when we're in our home offices. The stationary postures, it's from muscles and other body tissues. They're performing their best with alternating cycles, again, getting that blood movement. This goes for many parts of the body. Stationary postures have some common symptoms: neck and upper back discomfort, tired legs. And legs are one of them as well, that you have to be moving your legs to get that blood flow going. Otherwise, the blood just normally pools. It's the lowest part of the body. It's the biggest reservoir of fluids we have in our body. And there's little check valves in our veins and arteries there that actually continually move that blood back up to the upper body as long as the muscles are moving. If we're not flexing them, not moving, we won't get it. And we're going to have some trouble there with the circulation again. So we can have tired legs, swelling of the calves and ankles, fatigued eyes, all things that are going to happen from the stationary postures. And all of them, again, can be overcome very effectively by just taking some breaks, even up, moving around. If you're going to be stationed at home in a home office situation, get yourself a Varidesk, or get a situation where you can stand up once in a while and work as well, and then sit down. None of it should be constant. You shouldn't be standing all the time, shouldn't be sitting all the time. You should be able to vary that and move around and do things that will keep your body, all your body parts. Contact stress is a pretty serious deal, and it can be a little bit surprising sometimes where contact stress can come from. We obviously think about desks, hard edges on desks, hard corners, improper positioning, resting our forearms on and cutting off circulation. But also we need to look into how our office chairs are interacting. It was an interesting discovery for me when in my old job we went through a pretty extensive ergonomics assessment with a professional that came in and did it. A lot of things made sense. Getting a person up high enough and the screens back far enough and in the proper positioning so that the neck wasn't either too high, too low, again, side to side, so that we're not putting undue stresses on the head, neck, and back. But then once we got the workstation actually designed correctly, interacting correctly with the person, there were a few people we found that we had their chairs up high enough so that they were in the proper position for viewing and for their keyboarding, but their feet were off the floor. So that pressure point of the back of the legs against even the soft edge of their office chair was a pressure point, and it was potentially causing problems. So we had to put footrests down below. This person knew that. They brought it in. So those are all things that we want to look at and make sure that these pressure points are not going to be creating problems for us. And we talked about the hard, sharp edges, obviously. Chair backs and armrests. Now, if you're just using a common chair that you've had around, even if you got an office chair and you purchased one, it takes some dollars sometimes to get the proper chairs with the proper ergonomic fitting for us. Just buying a $89, $95 office chair and bringing it into our home office may not do the job. So we may have to do something additional to get a good interactive working station for ergonomics to keep ourselves safe. So discomfort and injury comes from the combined effects of improper positioning, the stationary positions, pressure causing surfaces, that we get those cumulative type stress disorders. Most of us occasionally experience the mild levels of discomfort and stiffness, occasional tightness in the neck and back, tiredness of the legs, and those things, a lot of times you take a break, you give it a little massage, maybe you walk around a little bit, they go away, and you can get rid of that. The moderate effects include advanced and/or repeated discomfort or soreness. So that's when we actually get into the place where you don't have the relief, even in taking a rest or massaging and so forth. And sometimes that comes from nerve damage, that we're actually damaging nerves in our body, or that the circulation has been cut to the point where it is creating starvation of blood flow, and the nerves aren't operating correctly, and we have to get that flow back. We have to get that relief off of those main nerve centers to make sure we don't get the numbness and the burning and so forth. So if it continues, we want to make sure that we are actually doing the right thing, and maybe making some adjustments, maybe getting a different chair, maybe finding some different way to set up our equipment. And again, we may need help with that. So discomfort and injury, we have to understand and avoid risky body positions and bad behaviors on our way we sit, the way we interact, the way we stand, the way we hold our necks, shoulders, and so forth can all be a risk. And they're going to be a risk, but we want to reduce those risks in a way that we're not going to take, again, that cumulative damage that can cause some long-term effects that we don't want. So we want to look at the office setup the same in our home, basically, as we do in our normal workplaces. Practice safe work habits, increase the circulation, and significantly reduce the accumulation of stress is where we're heading with all of this. Let's talk about a few components. Our chairs, very important. Here we see an image of a person that is in good ergonomic position, elbows pretty much a 90-degree, back has the curves, we have a well-supported chair, the knees are in the proper position, so there's not cutting off circulation, minimal pressure on the back of the thighs, and that's all important. And lumbar support is another one. Lumbar support is pretty important, and any of these, when we talk about the situation where we have a stand-up desk and then we sit down, we're varying it. Lumbar support is generally something you want to consider varying as well. I'm fortunate enough to have a lumbar support in my work vehicle, and I spend a lot of time in my work vehicle driving to and from safety sessions and audits and so forth. And I find myself very comfortable by adjusting that out, but then at times having to adjust it back, that it's not always in the same position. Being in that same position can actually cause some discomfort too. So we need to be very aware of our situation, and if we start getting a discomfort, researching in our minds where could this be coming from, and being aware and varying our positions and our adjustments somewhat, and making sure that we do continue to have the best circumstance for our body to continue in the work environment. So the hips slide to the rear of the chair, lumbar support, back support good, 2 to 4 inches from the back of the knee to the front edge of the seat pan, and that should be with no pressure again on the back of the thighs. So adjusting the chair for a comfortable fit, slight inward curve again on the lower back, that comes from the lumbar. If you don't have a lumbar, they will have a curvature to that chair. Most of the good ones have a nice curvature. And it doesn't cost a lot more right now to actually get a very good chair with a lot of good adjustments on it. So for a few dollars more sometimes we get something that is very much more usable in the workspace. Head should be balanced at the top of your shoulders, be in a alignment where, again, we're not dipping our chin down or not forcing our neck back to be able to look at that screen. And when sitting upright, shoulders should be centered above your hips, shouldn't be hunched forward, shouldn't be leaning back. Even though it seems comfortable at times, it's nothing that we should be doing especially a lot. If you do a stretch or something, that's one thing, but don't kick it back and be leaning back and trying to do work either. If you get just a little inward curve, your head and shoulders can start stressing, and it actually will raise just the pressure of the body, trying to hold that up if you're curved forward, leaning forward, intent on something, doing a job other than keyboarding even, or if you have your keyboard adjusted wrong. You can build up pressures in the discs in the back that can create some real discomfort. So we want to make sure that we continue again with that posture. A stretch, a quick move around, that's one thing. You don't want to find yourself falling into those bad habits again. Upper arms vertical, forearms horizontal. Very good positioning indicated here. Elbows and forearms have a surface to rest on. The armrests, as long as they're good quality padded armrests and they fit us well. That's another thing. A lot of chairs now that are not that way up on the price range will have adjustable arms so that we can actually get those adjusted as well, and that's another critical step. Just a half an inch difference in an armrest can actually make a difference in potential stresses on the body. So if your chair doesn't adjust well enough, employers are allowing the personnel to take office chairs home. Don't hesitate to ask if that's an option. Maybe they will purchase one for you and get it into your home. You need to kind of look at it and be talking with your employer, and making sure that you communicate well of your needs and work it out with hazard assessments and so forth of what you really need in that home work environment. Focus on what you can do to maintain your desired body postures, and that's the big thing. Make sure that no matter what we're doing, even if it's a quick stretch, that we easily can come back to those proper ergonomic positions that are going to protect us from those situations where we can get cumulative stress, where we can get the chronic stresses and aches and pains and musculoskeletal disorders. So things we have to always look at. So if your chair lacks unusable armrests, the surface is higher than it should be, you should try to support your forearms or at least your hands and wrists. It may mean that you have to actually get that chair up further. That can cause some problems with getting it in and out of the workspace as far as the desk you're working on. So don't make fit. Don't try and do things that are not successful. Again, work towards a goal of making sure that all of the office equipment that you're utilizing is going to make this ergonomic fit for the body to the work site is going to be proper. And if you have to forego for just a little bit, for a half a day or a day, you may get by with that, but you got to be working towards making sure we're getting this right. So again, alternating your sitting position, definitely. Again, don't fall into that, okay, I'm going to lean back and man, this is kind of comfortable, so this is the way I'm going to do it. Make sure you're altering that again. Use it as a break from that good posture, not for a actual continual posture that you're going to be using. And make sure even that lean back, that we're keeping the curves in the back, that we're keeping supported, and that we make sure we're not throwing off those other factors and making more stress points and so forth. Next, you set up your work surface and computer. And we talked about that already. The armrest's important. Height of the desk. And if you don't have an adjustable desk available, maybe you can get the measurements done and block it up. If it has to be a little bit higher, that's fine. You can do some temporary blocking. You may have to get some help with that. A little harder if you've got to make it lower. Kind of hard to cut off legs of the desks and so forth. But if you can adjust your chair and make that work and then get footrest, that's another way to go about that. So all things to consider, and you just want to brainstorm on this and make sure that we're doing it right. Keyboard should be directly in front of you, and the mouse as close to one side of the keyboard as possible to keep our arms and hands in the proper position. And the primary monitor should be directly in front of you. Typically, besides the monitor being in the correct distance up and down horizontally, vertically you should have them at least an arm's length away, maybe just a little more, not a lot more, but it's a good rule of thumb to have them about that arm's length away. And monitor height, of obviously balancing the head and keeping it centered again. And a secondary monitor should be as close to the primary as you can, and you should be switching screens. So if your attention goes to the side to your secondary monitor quite a bit, you may have to switch screens. Keep your vision straight ahead, eyes, head in the proper alignment and looking straight forward. We all are getting to use the multiple monitors. Most people have 2 now. A lot of people have 3. If you are using those, again, make sure you have those lined up so that the primary is the one right in the center and that you're centered on. So if you only have a screen that is laptop mounted, then there are some other considerations. You may have to raise it up just a little bit or lower it down a little bit and then tip that screen back. Be careful, because this actually has to be able to keep your arms in the proper position too. So wired keyboards, wired mice are still very, very inexpensive. So are the wireless, and that's a good way to actually keep your posture, still be able to block your laptop up and keep in the right positioning ergonomically. So how would you rate this picture? You're thinking, well, it looks really good, right? Except you actually look at the position of the back, you look at the position of the neck. This is going to cause some real problems. That might seem and it might feel fairly comfortable to start with, but with the time element and the muscles trying to react and hold a person in that area, you're going to have some potential problems. Again, we talked about the periodic standing, walking around, stretching. Absolutely. It's one of the greatest things you're going to do to help yourself. Shifting weight on one leg and the other if we are standing up. Taking a phone call standing up, that's a great one. Even if you don't have a Veridesk at home, you can take your phone call standing up. As soon as that phone rings, make sure you stand up safely, move your chair out of the way, make your communication. You can still take some notes if you have to. It's good to have maybe a little box or something to sit on, to have, or not to sit on, but to have next to you so you can have your notes at a proper angle. Or as you're talking, if you have to take a note, you can sit down briefly, stand up again. That's cool. That's actually going to keep that body moving in a really good way. Lots of things out there. Gel pads that help our wrists and forearms actually be cushioned a little better. Document holders to get them up in the place where we can actually see them. I talked about those footrests. We have to consider all of these items to make sure that we're doing the right things. Work aids, phone headset, or a speakerphone. Speakerphone I use all the time. They're very good now. I used to have a headset in my old job because the speakerphones, the microphones and stuff just didn't seem to work very well. They're really come a long ways in the technology now, so it's pretty easy to find a phone or have a phone that we can use the speakerphone. If you're going to use the headset or you have to use that, make sure that's briefly. And if you have to use a headset continually, then get a headset that actually has the earphones and the microphone boom mic and so forth, making sure that we're keeping again in the right position. You shouldn't be pinching that handset on your shoulder with your head. Bad situation. Lumbar pads we talked about, lumbar adjustments. Glare. Here's a big one. Glare actually causes us to move our head around and out of position. So it's very important that we take care of that glare and make sure that smartphones, yes, they're part of our life, but we can really have some horrible postures develop because of them also. If you're using them for taking calls, again, speakerphone option is good. The new phones I found very, very responsive as far as picking up over their microphone and the speakerphones that are available to us. So utilizing that is good. If we're using those for actually working on, we're going to have to keep that good postures. And here we have some examples of good postures and some not so good postures. So ponder on those. Make sure you're not falling into those red X categories. So changing the postures and positions, taking the breaks, keeping away from those long sustained periods of being in one position. Short breaks is cool, at least once an hour if you start feeling something, some tensions or something. You don't have to be away for 10 minutes. You can get up and walk around for 30 seconds or a minute, and it's going to do you wonders. It's going to get things moving again. Consider transitioning to different work areas as the day goes on if you have to. And I'm not a person who wants people sitting on the couch. That's kind of for leaning back and maybe watching some TV, and even that can cause some ergonomic problems sometimes. So make sure if you're having a home office and you're having to work in a home office, make sure it's a home office type environment, that we're keeping ourselves in the proper positions and making sure that we're interacting correctly with the workspace. Stretching is huge. Stretching is born into us. It is something that everybody wants to do. We've just forgotten about it. Anybody out there have pets, have dogs, cats? A lot do. What's the first thing they do when they wake up or get up or start moving? They stretch, don't they? They stretch. They just reach out there, grab carpet, roll around, and that's all bred into them. That's part of their DNA to get that blood flow moving in the muscles. And we really need to do that too. And not only at the beginning of the day, but when we take those 30-minute or 30-second or 20-second breaks, do some stretches, do some moves on the neck, move things around, keep things actually limbered up, squeeze and hold. And there's stretches, they don't have to be repetitive. You can just do one of them. Don't hold them forever. 5 seconds is good. Slow and deliberate. Don't push, don't strain, don't try to overstretch, especially in the beginning. The more you do it, the more your flexibility and mobility is going to improve. No pain should be felt when you're stretching. And just a few examples of some good stretches that you can utilize. There are also a lot on the internet that you can pull off, and just some very simple things. And if you do them consistently, just even 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, briefly, you're going to see a major difference in your mobility and your muscles able to flex and take some of these circumstances that we get ourselves into. For vision, extensive computer use can lead to fatigued eyes. Tend to blink less so we don't get the lubrication in our eyes, and that can hurt. They can burn. You may have to use some synthetic tears, which is fine. But the more that you get things set up correctly, the more at ease you are with your systems, the better even this is going to be. Mention to your eye doctor that you work on a computer, learn what considerations that you can get from that. So ergonomic tips for the home or work from home space. So in summary, the primary contributing factors include improper body positioning. Even after we have good body positioning, sometimes we slide out of those. Stationary postures, contact stresses. We've covered a number of the simple steps on what to do and what to watch for, what not to do. We've discussed the importance of taking breaks, reversing some of the effects from the work environment. All very important things. So we hope you get something out of this. We hope that you take some tips back and some things that you will remember and be able to utilize. Remember, notify your employer if you're having any discomforts, or if you need to have another risk analysis done, or you change things in your home office. Make sure you're communicative and you make sure you're doing the right thing. Thank you very much for joining the North Dakota Safety Council for this short ergonomics presentation.